welcome back to Man the Helm podcast. Today I am joined by Matt of Mule Resonator Guitars. What's up, dude?
What's up, man? Nice to meet you, Jake. Thanks
Likewise,
for having
man.
me here.
Well, see, this is the glorious part about the age in which we live in, dude, because, all it was a DM like, hey, dude, you want to talk for a minute? And here we are.
And,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
and that was like 2 days ago, and here we are having a conversation. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, to be fair, I'll give you a little bit of kind of the reasoning behind this podcast. I started this to kind of get back into the gear world. I was out of it for quite a while, man. So now I really enjoy talking, meeting new people, but with that comes a certain level of ignorance. To be fair, man, I honestly don't know a whole lot about you and Mule and all that stuff. I've heard a few other podcasts. I've seen them around. But maybe we can just kind of start with... I'm sorry, go ahead.
You and everybody else, the resonator guitar niche in the scheme of things. I mean, how many other guitar players do you know who's even seen one in real life? So,
fair.
It's kind of the white whale of the guitar world.
Very fair. Very fair. But nonetheless, perusing through your site and especially on Instagram, you guys are making some really awesome stuff. But before we get to like Mule itself, let's start with you, man. Where did you, let's get your backstory. When did you start playing music? What kind of inspired you to start going along this journey, dude?
Yeah, okay, so, my name's Matt Eich. I own Mule Resophonic Guitars in Saginaw, Michigan, and what we make are resonator guitars. I've got one right here. Maybe I'll show you. So this is kind of our secret project here. Most of the instruments that we make are made out of steel. This one's actually wood.
Cool.
This is a Charlie Parr signature guitar that we're going to be coming out with in September, and this one's all mahogany. But what makes a resonator guitar is what's underneath this cover plate. There's 3 aluminum cones inside, and that's what makes a resonator guitar, and it gives it a really distinctive sound. So it's a really unique music tool, and kind of the journey to making these unusual instruments started in high school when I made a kit guitar, and my first guitar that I bought, I just instantly started messing with. Like, I hung it from a tree and spray painted it, and started carving little things into it and just messed with it. And then I had to graduate high school, and I was wondering what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I found this guitar making school in Phoenix called Roberto Venn, and it was a 9-month course. And going to school for 9 months instead of 4 to 8 years sounded
right.
way better to me. I just wanted to get out of school and work, and went to Roberto Venn kind of thinking I'll be a professional musician and building guitars will be my day job or my plan B. And when I got to Roberto Venn and saw this whole world of making tools for musicians, it really cracked my brain open to, there's like people whose whole life is trying to create inspirational tools for musicians. And I really just, I fell in love with that process of it, and so the musician thing went out the window, and started making instruments. I started making guitars for Huss and Dalton Guitars in Virginia, in the Shenandoah Valley for a couple years, and that's where I really cut my teeth and got around really great instruments and great people, and that's where I kind of learned that making guitars is about human beings. It's this mechanism of connection between people. It's not a gear argument. It's not, all those specs and things that we spend so much energy, arguing about. It's really about going to the pizza place down the street and there's a bluegrass jam in the back and you meet a bunch of people that you never met before and now you're buds and you're watching football on Sunday, and music is the thing that makes that happen. So that, that really set me straight. And, a few years later, I ended up back in Michigan, and I saw a guy named Kelly Joe Phelps play a resonator guitar, and that was my first experience with a resonator, and it blew my doors off. These guitars are so so much louder than a typical instrument.
Oh yeah, yeah,
They're really expressive, and so that guitar stood toe to toe with one of the most passionate players I'd ever seen. And I left going, I got to figure out how to make one of these. And I hadn't cut a piece of metal up to that point. I didn't know how to weld. I didn't know anything, and that's kind of where it kicked off.
dude. Well, and see, this is the stories that I love because I've talked to a lot of people that build, whether it's amps, guitars, pedals, whatever tool that you're providing for musicians to utilize. And a lot of them kind of have that same sort of idea of wanting to be that quote unquote pro musician, whatever that means these days. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's so many aspects of the music industry that people don't think about, man.
Totally.
You know, you don't have to be the dude on stage, you know,
Yes.
to make an impact in the music industry.
Absolutely. 100%. There's so many little I don't want to say they're side hustles. They're essential parts of, you know,
Yeah.
of the music creation process. And with I think that was one of the most unexpected, like thankfully unexpected things with making these guitars. I honestly was a little afraid of becoming that stereotypical hermit in his shop with no friends and just
sure.
carving little, brace stock and stuff. But what ended up happening was seeing players become friends, and when they get the guitars, it's this crazy new sound that they haven't heard before, and they'll text me 2 weeks later and they'll go, I just wrote a whole album. And whoa, like it influenced someone's musical choice. They heard something in that guitar, and instead of taking a higher voicing, they took a lower one, which changed the word that they used, which changed the meaning of a song. And now you're sitting in a room watching people sing that song back to them on stage because of what they heard in that instrument. I got goosebumps on my right arm just thinking about it, because there's not really a word for that emotion. Like what is that? You're not on stage doing it. It's it's extraordinary, and being an instrument maker, you're the only people on the planet that get to be part of that. So I agree. There's thousands of different ways to be part of the music thing.
Yeah. Well, and with people that build, I've had that similar conversation with people, man, because regardless of what piece of gear you pick up, it does influence the way you play. Now, how dramatically it makes you change the way you play is subjective, obviously. I mean, at a very nuanced level, I'm not going to play a Strat and a Les Paul the same. You know what I mean? It'll be pretty close, but it's going to influence me to do something else per the different instrument. But when you have such an extreme example, like what you were saying with the resonators, or even with like the stuff you guys are making with like the mule casters and stuff like that, like it is such an off the wall like thing that you'd never have heard before until you've actually sat and played one. You know
Absolutely.
What I mean?
Yeah, and that's inspiration. I think sometimes we talk about inspiration as like this magical thing that descends from heaven and we have to scribble it down on a napkin in a restaurant, when really inspiration is just is a mechanism for making different musical choices. And when you have something that's very different, like you're saying, I tell people, swing it wide. Putting that low output PAF in your Les Paul is not going to make you write different songs. It's not going to get you out of that rut. You're going to be able to get away with your same bullshit. But you pick up a mandolin and suddenly you're like, whoa, what do I do with this? Bingo, rut busted. And one of my favorite weightlifters, Jim Wendler, has this quote called "majoring in minors," and I think it's true in like the athletic world, but it's also in guitar world. We major in minors. We want to talk about our pots, and we want to talk about our scatter wines and all of that stuff. And None of that matters, man. In my experience with pro musicians is they don't give a crap about that. They're just making music, and they don't even know what strings they put on their guitars sometimes. And but all of us little like casuals are, run around arguing about all of that sort of stuff. So, yeah, I completely agree. Inspiration is just finding new tools to use.
Well, dude, and it's that it's that mantra that's not been it wasn't coined by this gentleman, but Josh Scott of JHS says it all the time. If it sounds good, it is good, dude.
Yeah,
Like,
totally.
you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't like at the end of the day, the materials used are going to make a difference, but your subjective opinion of what the material is isn't going to determine whether it's good or not for someone else. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I would even take that phrase maybe a little farther and say that like, you know, is there good and bad? When it comes to sound, it's is so subjective. One day I'm gonna plug into an amp and I'm gonna be like, man, this is exactly what I'm looking for. And that a week or two later, I plug into the same amp and I'm like, nah. And I mean, what beer are you drinking today? What ice cream are you eating for dessert? Like, it's a completely subjective thing. And when we put things on the spectrum when it comes to sound, is we're really just limiting our expression, right? I'm on this track.
Yeah.
I'm looking at this way. Well, man, maybe the chocolate ice cream is just as good today, And it's the same thing with sound. So it's all just different tools, It's not this pursuit of best. Like I've heard lots of guitars that are amazing instruments that I think sound like shit. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's just not a tool that I need in that moment. A week from now, I might think it's the best thing ever because of music that I've heard or players that I've encountered. So, let instruments be what they are.
Yeah, I mean, I like how you keep referring to this, and that's what I think people don't understand is these things, whether it's amps, pedals, guitars, whatever it may be, are tools for the musician.
Yeah.
It's a tool for you to achieve that inspiration. When you pick it up, that's the best piece of gear that I've ever had is when I pick up something and immediately the gears start turning and I'm like, "Oh, I can do something crazy interesting with this." And it like you said, it doesn't happen from like guitar to guitar. Like if I were to go to like a big box shop and pick up a bunch of different like tellies, you know what I mean? There might be one in there that like, man, this one really gets it, but I
Yeah.
probably picked up like 30 guitars at that point. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think when it comes to trying a new piece of gear, asking yourself, what do you want to accomplish? Or
Mhm.
what is this piece of gear teaching me? I think is a really important like intention, and we conflate those things, right? We're trying to make this telly sound like my Les Paul. If this
Right.
telly was just a little fatter, but boy, that bridge is really, really spiky. If it just was a little bit rounder, like my Les Paul well, what are you trying to do with that guitar? Or what does that guitar have to teach you? Go
Mhm.
down that uncomfortable rabbit hole. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. Find those telly players. See those sounds. Learn those new things. Then go back to your Les Paul and take those new things that you've learned. But don't try to make that beat this. And
Yeah,
we
for
waste
sure.
so much of our music time. At this point we've all got, full-time jobs, families, other things we got going on. We play a half hour a week. Our time is precious, man. You got to make use of it. And knowing what you want out of an instrument or knowing what it's trying to teach you, I think makes that time valuable.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and with that joy that you get from playing an instrument, anybody that plays any instrument has that sort of elation whenever they play something. You know what I mean? Whether it's something they're writing, whether it's a song they're learning or something like that.
Yeah,
It's that release you can get at the end of a hard day if you want to,
totally.
sit down and play. The problem that I have and what I love what you just said, why are we wasting that precious time when we could be sitting with our instrument and arguing about, like you said, pots and pickup wines and
Yeah.
things like that ultimately at the end of the day if it's what you want, awesome, go get it. If it's not for you, there's no point in arguing on the internet about it, man.
Totally.
You know?
Yeah, it's like trying to convince someone what their favorite beer should be. You know,
Right.
like you can say all sorts of
Yeah.
things that make sense and sound good, but it's not going to change my mind. I don't like it. And sound is exactly
Yeah.
the same way. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I always think it's funny whenever I talk to people, and I don't mean any disrespect when I say this, to the people that comment online and stuff like that. The people that are actually doing the thing are not the people that have the mean comments. The people
Yeah.
that are actually building the
Totally.
instruments, the people that are actually building the amplifiers, the people that are actually gigging
Yeah.
are not the ones that are complaining online about these nuance issues that don't matter, dude.
Yeah, and I'm gonna hang us luthiers out to dry a little bit here because, you know, I think it's kind of this revolving door of when it comes to the gear talk is like I got into this, you know, because of how do you make it, what's it made out of, what can you learn
Mhm.
about the materials, okay? And a lot of guitar makers do. Almost everybody I know has done that. And what happens is like especially when you get to be a professional, like when you're making a living making instruments, you don't know what you're doing when you're starting. You're looking at what's been done, you're trying to learn those lessons. And what's been done is talking about the materials and talking about the gear and the specs part of it. And so when you're starting, you're just looking for, how do I say this? What are people buying? You know,
Mhm.
so that I can make these tools and support my family, and how does this? So we end up just kind of copying and echoing these things that have been said. Oh, well, you know, for customers, it's really important that we have tight grain lines on our spruce tops. So I'm going to talk about our tight grain lines on our spruce tops, and then some, you know, new people into the guitar world say, oh, Matt's talking about tight grain lines on spruce tops. It must be really important. So that's what, you know, what I'm going to, you know, spend energy on is looking for tight grain spruce tops. And it becomes this revolving door of, well, I'm saying what I think you want to hear, and then someone says, oh, that's important. And
I gotcha.
and so I don't think it's anyone's fault, and you can like whatever you like if where you're at in the music world is you like the gear aspect and how those things work together. Absolutely, you do you. Something I've been trying to consciously interrupt is kind of that same old, same old. We don't have any specs on our website. We don't have weights of guitars. We don't have scale lengths. We don't have what pickups we use. Nothing, because I want people, when they see an instrument, to just be thinking, what kind of music can I make with this thing? That's it. And as soon as you throw numbers in, I think our brain just kind of starts going down this fact rabbit hole. Oh, it's a 25-inch scale length. I prefer 25.5. I don't think I could play that. You just cost yourself maybe the best song you've ever written because you didn't get to hear that sound because of a half-inch difference on a scale length.
Right.
That's not my jam, you know.
Right.
And if it is, cool, like absolutely no judgment, but that's not why I do what I do. And I want to get guitars to people who or educate people on like what is important. It's what this thing sounds like, you know. It's the decisions you make because of what you hear.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's the aesthetic from a customer perspective, it's the feel from a customer perspective, and it's definitely the sound from a customer perspective.
Absolutely,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
If you knock those three out of the park, you're good to go, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, Everett, that's a great priority list. It's gotta look great, sound great, and feel great. After that, everything is kind of detail-y and doesn't really influence your playing.
Yeah, well, and I mean, at the end of the day, man, like if you're looking for something so like very hyper specific, there are plenty of boutique companies that will make you literally exactly what you want down to the exact spec.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great experience too. If that's what you want, do
Yeah.
it. You know, and many guitar makers are able to do that.
Mhm.
And so lots of spots for for different people here.
Yeah, for sure. So when did you actually start Mule, even in its infancy? Like, what was like the first thing that kind of got you going into that?
So, how I got to Mule was it was kind of a convoluted story where
I'm here for
I,
convoluted
all
stories.
right, cool. Like, let's go. So I was working at Hudson Dalton Guitars in Virginia, and like I said, changed my whole perspective on making instruments. The people at Hudson Dalton, amazing. They're still friends. I'm hanging out with Brian at Fretboard Summit next week. Jeff Huss came to the
Nice.
shop 2 years ago. He invited me to his retirement party. I haven't worked there in 13 years. No, even longer. Yeah, whatever it was, 17 years. Amazing humans. But while I was there, some members of my family were all kind of fighting cancer at the same time. So I moved back to Chicago, or I moved up to Chicago to kind of help out with what was going on, with full intention that I was going to move back to Virginia. So I was working at an industrial supply place while all of that was going on, and those challenges kind of snowballed one after another, and 6 months turned into 6 years, and then that was like 2009, and I got fired. And that was recession time, so everyone was putting the screws on. And so what I was doing at the time was I was picking orders, and it was incredibly difficult. Where you had 11 orders every 10 minutes, and you were walking 13, 14 miles a day picking these orders out of these aisles. So you get this sheet every 10 minutes printed off, and you had to run down these aisles and, pick out your 17 screws and get it in a tote and get it in a bag. And if you counted 16 screws instead of 17, that was an error, and that was marked down. Or if you sent it to the wrong department, an error. So you were allowed 12 errors, and I got 22, and that was 22 errors in a year out of 111,000 lines picked. So I don't even know what the math is, but it was like,
Yeah.
I counted wrong, 20 times out of 111,000 times, and that was it.
Right.
So it's 2009. I was like, I had 2 years experience at a guitar making place, but my main experience was literally making cardboard boxes like that we'd pack them in and then picking orders. I didn't really have any experience, and so I moved back to Michigan, where I grew up, because I was like, I don't really know what I'm gonna do now. And so I moved back to Michigan, and I was kind of playing in coffee shops a little bit and kind of just simmering. I don't know what to do. I couldn't really play music in front of people. I got really nervous. I'm like, this isn't sustainable. And and then I saw Kelly Joe play in Traverse City, and Kelly Joe Phelps was the person who I like growing up. Like in high school, I was Black Label Society, Pantera, like that was my deal. I would put Stronger Than Death by Black Label Society on my headphones, and I would fall asleep to it. It was like that.
Yeah.
Like I just lived and breathed that sort of stuff. And then when I went to guitar making school, I think I saw like a article in Acoustic Guitar Magazine about Kelly Joe, and I picked up his album Tap the Red Cane Whirlwind, and at the time I didn't even know you could play guitar with your fingers. I didn't know that was a thing. And so here's this guy playing this acoustic guitar on stage by himself with his fingers, and I was listening to this album, and all the songs, there was like 6 songs on there, 7 songs. Every one of them was like 8 minutes long, and it felt like seconds. It was
Right.
amazing. And I've seen Kelly unfortunately passed away a couple years ago, but I got to see him play 6 or 7 times live, and it was the most extraordinary it was the most extraordinary music experience I've ever had. He would walk out on stage, not say a word. He would sit there and tune his guitar, and nobody even breathed. And then he would start playing, and it was like this curtain was just pulled away. He was just showing people this part about being a human being I've never experienced. And that changed my trajectory. I was like, I need to make acoustic guitars, and I need to do that. And so, I was really into his music for a long time. That's how I ended up at Hudson Dalton. And then 10 years after that is when I saw Kelly Joe play his steel-bodied resonator guitar in Traverse City. And it happened again. I saw him play, and it was, people were yelling questions about this guitar up to him in between songs. Like, they just couldn't help themselves, And he made this joke about it blinding the audience because he it was chrome and it would catch the lights off the stage, and so he made this joke about it blinding the audience. So when I left the show, and I was just like, I got to figure out how to make these. Like, on the way back, the idea was guitar makers like seeing the natural materials of the instrument. Maybe I could make one that looked more like the metal it was made out of, not chrome plated and shiny, but more like the steel. And so since the beginning, a big part of Mule has been making guitars with patina, showing like what a weathered piece of steel looks like, so that it's just a tool. It's not this showpiece. It's not this thing you hang on the wall. It's not something you pull out of a case and people go, wow, look at the fancy wood. It's a piece of metal. It's a piece of it's a piece of steel. It's a piece of maple. What are you gonna do with it? And so that was what got me started on Mule, and I got to make Kelly a resonator. He had number 8, and it was just this beautiful, like, full circle moment where he really changed my life multiple times, where I got into acoustic guitars because of his music. I got into resonators because of his music, and the things that he said to me after he got his first Mule, that gave me the power, man. I was like, I made his guitar in a closet in my brother's garage that's about as wide as this workbench,
Yeah.
And so then here's this guy, the reason I'm doing this, telling me what he thought about the instrument, and I was like, fuck it, let's go. I've got that email like printed out on my desk over there, and that was the moment.
Yeah, dude. I mean, that's the thing I've tried to explain to people is usually you have these leading up to, like you seeing him play live, the first time, and then you seeing him play live the second time. But you always have these awesome full circle moments that happen in your life, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where it's just like, dude, this is what was meant to happen. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And it's hard to see that, like, when in the actual moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why it's like, especially in this industry, man, that's what I tell all my friends. I'm just north of Nashville, so I've got guys and buddies of mine that are just really, really slugging it out in the trenches, trying to, make a name for themselves out gigging. And it's like, dude, you've just got to put your head down and go, man. Like, you can't let up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're going to have one of those moments, but it just takes time.
Yeah, and and I would add to that too is, like, I think like all of the important questions, all the important problems are questions of balance. There isn't a simple answer, right? It's seeing the two, like, opposing sides of things, and success is the balance between those. And I think putting your head down and getting after it is essential. And also something that I recently thought of when I got to go back to Minnesota and see where I dropped out of college and started my first little shop. And I was remembering that time where I was living in this little industrial garage in the middle of winter in Minnesota, sleeping underneath this heat blanket with my little refrigerator, going to the grocery store to go use the bathroom, sneaking into the college to use the shower. And I thought about those times, and I was just like, that was amazing, you know.
Yeah.
I like, it was fun at the time, but it was a grind. But I look back at that, I go, that was amazing. That is just as amazing to me as whatever Mule is right now.
Yeah.
And that was a real realization moment for me. So I think put your head down, but also keep your head up and look around and take in those moments, because like you said, is there's always going to be those things that come full circle. There's always going to be these moments that happen here where we go, whoa, remember that thing 12 years ago that happened?
Yep.
That's how I got here. And there's these little tiny beautiful moments that happen along that book that friend gave you to encourage you when you dropped out of high school. That little thing that, man, there was a, I'm getting a little choked up thinking about it. When I was at Roberto Venn, the guitar making school, I'm 19 years old. I'm doing my laundry at 3 o'clock in the morning at the laundromat because loads of laundry were 25 cents instead of $2. So I'd set my alarm and I'd wake up and I'd walk my laundry to the laundromat and I'd do my laundry. And there was this veteran there. He was a young guy, and he was doing his laundry with his wife and his kid. And we got talking, and told him why I was there, and he told me about his stuff, and we talked while we were doing our laundry, and he got done with his laundry first, and he looked at me and he said, Matt, this is gonna work out for you, like I can tell. And totally random dude. I do not accept compliments well. Like, I'm very good at brushing them off, and okay, whatever.
Dude, I feel you. Yeah,
like,
I got you.
They do not land. That was 20 years ago, whatever it was, and and it still gets me choked up. That's a little beautiful moments that if you're just doing the grind thing, if you're just beating your head against the wall trying to get someplace, you're gonna miss. He's gonna say that thing to you. It's not gonna land because you're so busy trying to get to where you think you gotta go. It sounds cliche, but it's the balance. You gotta get to where you gotta go, but you're already there, man. And how you execute that is going to be the satisfaction of your life. And at the end of the day, that's what you're trying to get. You're not trying to get that shiny thing. You're trying to be satisfied with who you are, the people that you love, and what you're trying to accomplish. So that's my little rant.
No, that's you're 100% true, dude. I mean, if I were to add anything to that the quote unquote hard times, whatever that means, because I know it's relative to everybody what a hard time is.
Absolutely.
That's what shapes you, though, and that's what gives you that resilience.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? That's what, like you said, I 100% agree, because the people that are just constantly focused and just trying to push the needle forward, they usually do miss, because like you said, they're not appreciating the small nuances that do happen from those day-to-day experiences. But at the end of the day, though, I think that struggle is necessary for human beings. You know what I mean? I really do, man. Like, you have to live at some point, you have to struggle through stuff to be better on the other side of it. Now, that absolutely sucks when you're going through it, man. There's no way of getting around it, though. It just is what it is.
Yeah.
But like, in my experience, I've been through some really horrible situations, and it always works out. It might not work out the way I want it to work out, but it works out.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. There's multiple solutions,
Yeah,
and if you're open to this turning out in some way, now you're open to see those things. It's like, if you're locked in on what has to be this way, like you said, you're going to miss. But if you got that broad view and you're like, I was going this way, but I could take 1/2 step left, and I'm good with that, man. Heck yeah. I could have said, hey, what I want to build is is my art guitars with 3 cutaways and puzzle piece inlays and 2 necks
Right.
because this is my artistic vision and this is who I am as a guitar maker, and my purpose is to express that.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be here talking to you right now. I probably
Yeah.
would just be in my basement somewhere making 2 of those a year, hoping someone would buy them.
Yeah.
But instead, it was like, oh, I've never cut a piece of metal, but that guitar's pretty amazing. Maybe I could make one of those too. Here we are. Now we're making 350 guitars a year, and it's like, all right, cool. I'll take this life. That's fine with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said too, man, like, because how long has Mule been a thing now? Like in its truest form?
12 years.
Okay, yeah. But the thing is, like, this is a gradual thing, you know what I mean? And it's a good thing as a business owner. You couldn't, probably even 6 years ago, I don't know if you could have facilitated making that many guitars a year. You know what I mean?
Oh, heck no. Absolutely not. Yeah.
So, but it's awesome because what starts to happen once you really find that passion, that point where you're like, yep, this is what I'm doing. Everything's kind of coalesced together. This is what I'm going to have happen. Now you get to do some really awesome things with some really awesome people, especially in the music world. I've said this a bunch. From the outside perspective, from somebody looking in, the music industry is massive. The artists that play, the people that build, it's a huge swath of people. It's the tiniest community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Once you start to really get into it, dude, it is so tiny.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That's funny that you said that because I went to my first NAMM show in 2018, I think. And, I thought the world was, these half dozen little guitar makers and the big 3, and that was kind of it. And then you go to NAMM show and you're like, whoa, this is 3 floors. This is, a million square feet full of every possible aspect of this industry. And what's funny is that, you walk around NAMM show and you see the instrument parts of things, and you're just like amazed at how big this is. But then, like, Sony has their area at NAMM, and it's a whole building. Like, I'm walking around being amazed at all the guitars, but that's, like you said, it's like, that is a drop in the bucket because you have to go to the next building to see Sony's thing. They bought the whole building, It's not just, we built a 2-story meeting room and showroom at NAMM show. Wow, that's amazing. I could never imagine building a building inside of the convention center. But Sony had to rent its own convention center, and you're exactly right. It seems like this giant thing, but it's really small and really full of awesome human beings.
Yeah, dude, I was about to say, there's always a few bad apples in the bunch, but, dude, 99.9% of the time, if you're talking to another musician, you're going to have a good talk,
Yeah, absolutely.
Just because that passion is there, those hours spent are there, like you already have so much in common, even when you don't know each other's name.
Yeah, absolutely. There's all the challenges. We all have the same challenges. The little tiny details are different, but everyone has the same challenges. And if I'm talking to you, I know a great deal of who you are as a human, that probably more so than a lot of people in our immediate life, the people in our immediate life, if they're not involved with, a business or involved with music, they just can't relate. You can explain a challenge and they go, man, bummer for you, I guess, but they have no idea. There's no vocabulary in common, and I think that helps keep that community real close because we all get each other in a way that other people don't get us. And also, that comes along with that, I think that, like, those few bad apples is, like, they kind of get eaten alive, Like, a bunch
Oh,
of
for
good
sure.
people together. If there's a bad apple, it's like, get him off our boat. Like, I don't have
Yeah.
time for that attitude, for that, pushing your weight around, for that trying to get what you can out of people. That shit does not fly anymore. If you go
No.
to like a NAM show and that's your vibe, people are like, I don't know, man. It's not for me. And then as soon as so and so says, "Oh, he's not for me," I'm like, "Okay, cool. You know, we're buds. I know who you are. I know what you're about." And if it's like, "Hey, that's not our vibe," all right, everyone stops and turns around and looks the other direction. you
Yeah.
know, so
Well, and especially in the people that make things, like your customer connection is what makes you money. The way
yeah,
that
totally,
you interact with your customer, man. And like you said, those people that are kind of the opposite mindset, which is a very, very small amount of people from my
absolutely,
experience and other people I've talked to's experience.
yeah,
But that's why you have these people that have this brand loyalty or this like gear loyalty or whatever you want to call it is you have this such amazing customer service in this industry for the
hmm
most part.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like for you, I got on Instagram and I was like, dude, I love the aesthetic of these guitars. I'm gonna send this guy a message, and within like an hour, you're like, yeah, man, let's do it Friday. Sounds good. I'm like, see,
yeah,
there we go, man. You know?
absolutely. Yeah, that's the vibe. I think that's kind of we can talk all about the bad sides of social media and the internet and technology and stuff, and I'm full of those ideas as well. But
Sure.
the other side of that coin is the fact that, like, I think that level has been raised. It's, before social media and stuff, like, you could get away with more because everybody was kind of in their little hidey hole somewhere. Now it's like
Sure.
everybody, like, I can see very clearly what everybody else is doing to take care of their customers, to express their stuff, to, keep that great vibe. And if someone else is setting the example and setting the example and setting the example, it spreads really fast. And what that means for people is really great experiences. I like, not to knock big name brands at all. Like what you like, but now with small builders, it's like you can like you can get progress pictures of your guitar being built. Like, we have an iPad that's right here, where when the guys, like, Dennis builds the body, he takes a picture on the iPad, he emails it to the customer, and it says, hey James, soldered up your body today. Next up is paint, and Andrew's gonna take care of that tomorrow. You know, that's your piece of steel, man. Like, that's your piece of wood for the neck blank. You get to see that happen. You know, you get to
Yeah.
you get to hear the people who make the instruments talk about stuff. You get to, I can't tell you, like, 90% of my friends these days are customers or people somehow connected to what I do for a living. These are my people now. Like, we
Yeah.
talk about barbecue and we talk about all of that stuff just because that level has been raised. You have no choice but to be friends with human beings now, you know?
Well, very true.
Yeah.
Well, it also helps. I know you're going to the Fretboard Summit here pretty soon, and it also helps going to events like that where you get to
Yeah.
kind of reconnect with people you don't get to
Yeah.
see very often. You know what I mean?
1,000%. Yeah, it's a total party. Those 2 times a year you go to those shows. Those are the 2 times a year you get to see your buddies, and especially when they're musicians, is like they're just constantly traveling. If they're not traveling, they got to be at home. So it's not like, hey buddy, you want to fly over here and go camp. They can't do that stuff. So when you go to those shows,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's you and you and you and you. It's just the coolest vibe. It's the best thing. And
Yeah.
people will gripe about NAMM show and stuff. I don't know. I think having 1,300 people walk up to your booth over 4 days telling you what you do is amazing, and you getting phone numbers and talking about cool stuff. I think that's pretty awesome.
Dude, it's the same regardless of what you're doing in this industry. It's all about networking and connecting with people, man.
Yeah,
That's how everybody wins. You all get together, you talk, you share ideas, you share product, you share whatever you share songs, and next thing you know, like you start to have these very close connections with people, whether it's professional or personal. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
But that's what it's all about, man. It's about meeting people, getting stuff in people's hands, playing music, having a good time, and being a good person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It 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 makes life so much easier when people do that, man. And most musicians are like that.
Yeah, and I would add to that too, for people who might be listening or like, how do I get into that? Okay, or what for whatever they're doing, and I would add, find your tribe.
Yeah,
I really can't overemphasize that enough because a lot of times when people hear, the make the connections thing, the like, networking thing, they're in that kind of hustle mindset where now you're hustling your connections and like
yeah,
I can smell that a mile away. If you're talking to me because you want something from me, I can feel it in my bones, and I might not even have that thought, but I'm talking to you and my whole body goes like this. Uh-huh. Okay, how's the show going?
yeah,
Oh, that's great.
yep.
Wonderful. Any new products today? And suddenly we're like this. Making connections is about finding the connections. Who you are
Yeah,
as a human being will connect with certain people and it won't with others. Let it happen. But as soon as
yeah,
you're in that room, man, that last NAMM show I had this one experience where, I was talking to a YouTube guy who has one of our guitars and he's very popular, and one of my acquaintance maker friends happened to be at the booth at the same time, and he saw it as his chance to go and you know take his shot and interrupted this conversation I was having with this YouTuber about how his flight went from overseas with his newborn baby. And so all of a sudden someone was pushing their way in, shoving this amp in his face. Well, was that effective for
yeah.
you? It sure wasn't. And I like now look at you in a much different way because he thought in his head, this is my opportunity. I'm going to take my shot. Let it
Hmm.
happen. Show up, be a good human being, communicate, just be yourself. But as soon as you see things as this is my shot, it makes sense in your head. You're in survive mode, right? You're trying to make something happen for good reasons. But as soon as you're saying, I'm going to take my shot, you got to look to see, are you taking something from somebody else? You know, I'm going to take my
Yeah.
shot. Oh, I'm going to take from you. You have something that could help me. And we never think that way in our head. You're never like, oh, he's so and so. He could really do awesome things for me. And that's the only reason I'm going to talk to him. We come up with all sorts of like great sounding reasons to justify it. But you got to get out of that mindset, man.
Dude, the way that I have always thought about it, and I've been doing the podcast and a little bit of YouTube stuff, and the way that I have always tried to force myself to think about it is what value am I adding to either the person consuming it or to the individual that if I'm demoing a pedal? What
Yep.
value am I adding to this company or this individual that's consuming this piece of media?
Yeah, that's
You know what I
great.
mean?
I love that.
And at the end of the day, dude, the people that stick around and are consistent in that sort of like very specific space, like the online quote unquote YouTuber influencer, whatever you want to call them,
Hmm.
the people are going to come to you with as long as you're honest and authentic with your content you're putting out. But
Yeah.
that same idea can apply to anything we do in this industry or anything in life in general, dude.
Yeah.
Just what value can you add to the individuals, like whatever your customer is, whether that is the person that is, maybe the person at your day job that you're passing reports off to, or maybe like your wife or your husband or your significant other, whoever that is, like what are you doing to benefit them? You have that like
100%.
almost what's that? what's that good buzzword? That servant leadership. There you go. That's what I was
Yeah.
looking for. The corporate world,
Yeah. Yeah.
buzzwords we got.
Yeah, and I was thinking about that like the service word. And I don't know why it feels like a dirty word. Maybe because it's just like so misaligned now, like gratitude. Like two
Sure.
years ago, everyone was talking about gratitude, but it was really interesting because everyone was talking about gratitude as if it was this life hack that you could make your life better for yourself by being more thankful about other people. So if you woke up in the
Right.
morning and if you thought you wrote down your 5 gratitudes in your gratitude journal, then you're going to get what you want. It's not
Yeah.
it's not the point of
Yeah.
gratitude. The point of
Yeah.
gratitude is other people. So what? You wrote it in your little journal. She doesn't know, like your wife doesn't know that when she bought you Guinness for dinner, it was like, yeah, it was awesome. You didn't say it to her. You're not doing anything. And so I think the word that I've changed that to is contribute. What are you
Yeah.
contributing to whatever that situation? I don't necessarily have to be a servant because there's some connotation involved, like I'm doing what other people want, right? And
Sure. Sure.
sometimes
Sure.
that's not the thing. But if I am contributing to this team of employees, if I'm contributing to the community that I'm in or the relationships that I'm in, if, like you said, like if I'm adding value, if this situation is better because of the things that I am doing or trying or whatever, there's not a lot more to ask then, right? Like if you're
No.
contributing to the team but you have a different idea than me on something, I'm still going to respect it. I couldn't do anything without Jake. I don't agree with him on
Right.
how this should happen. I don't have to do it. We're going to put heads on it, but he's contributing. He's making a difference here and therefore I respect him.
Right.
And that contribution, I think it's that thing that you have to very intentionally put in, and I screwed up all the time. We get caught up in the momentum of the social media game and the content game and the doing of the things and this, that what am I contributing here, what am I offering to
Yeah.
people, is that speed bump that you need. Hey, it's not about you. This is not all about you, what you want, where you want to go. It's what can you contribute to other people, some knowledge that you have that they might not, some mistakes that you can talk about so that they might not make them, some perspective that might change the way that they think a little bit. That's the stuff to offer, not you got the new shiniest gizmo or you're the authority thought leader on whatever you've chosen to think about. Therefore, internet, thousands of you internet people, I'm going to tell you how you should fix your problems, even though I have no idea who you are.
Right.
It's not that attitude. It's just, hey, take it or leave it. Here's something that you might be able to use. Cool.
Yeah, man. I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, my thing for the online stuff and the social media presence and all that is always just been honest authenticity.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna try to put on a show for you, dude. Like how I started the episode with you, man. Like, dude, I am so ignorant to a lot of things in the gear world, man, and I do not try to hide that, man. Like, I don't
Yeah.
sit here and say, "Oh yeah, man, I was on your website and I was looking at all the fine grained, whatever you were, like, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit here and I'm gonna say, dude, I love the aesthetics of the guitars. Well, from what I've heard online, they sound amazing. I want to talk to you.
Yeah.
That is it. You know
I
what I
you know
mean?
I noticed that, and I honestly appreciated that. I had that thought when you were saying that. I'm like, cool. Like this is just a normal like I don't know anything about your guitars or where you're from. Let's talk about it. Awesome.
Yeah.
And I think it's funny because I've just been recently putting words to this where I have like two favorite business books that I've read, and they're like my go-to. They're like the mic drop of books to me. I haven't read a single
Okay.
one in like 8 or 9 years
Yeah.
since then. I used to listen to like all the business podcasts and audio books and stuff. I don't anymore.
Yeah.
All the Instagram accounts they tell me how to do this. I don't follow them anymore. And the
Yeah.
reason why is none of it helped. It's
No.
everyone's situation is so complex and unique to them. It's just about solving problems and learning how to see problems, to actually see them and not ignore them, how to go about the business of trying things and learning and trying things and learning and applying that to future decisions. That's the only answer. But now these days, it seems like everyone is trading on authority.
Yeah.
I'm into working out with sandbags. Therefore, I am the sandbag guy on Instagram, and I'm going to tell you the 9 winning ways that you can incorporate sandbags to improve your jujitsu, live longer, be a more emotionally competent, and it becomes this thing where I just know all of this stuff that you don't know because I'm the guy and you're not the guy, so you better listen to me because I know stuff. And everyone is just accepting that shit, and I can't stand it. Why do we have to be authorities on stuff? Why can't we just do stuff? Can't we just
Yeah.
work hard and try to be better at it, but not have to tell everybody how they should be doing things as if we know? We don't know anything. Let's just talk about that some more, and now we can have, like you said, an honest communication between human beings.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, at the end of the day, man, that's really what it's all about.
Totally.
Like we're gonna sit and we're gonna do a long form conversation. You know, if I don't know something, I try to relay that to everybody I talk to. I've got 2 young daughters. If you don't know something,
Yes.
ask. You need to be
Yes.
curious, get the information,
Yes.
whatever it is. You can't just sit here and say, well, yep, that sounds something like I should know, but I'm not going to say I don't know because I don't want to look dumb. It's like, dude, I'll
Yes.
look dumb all day, man. That does not bother
I've got
me.
no problem looking dumb. Yeah, and
No.
what's even worse is you either don't know something so you don't say anything, or you don't know something so you start saying things. And I've encountered that way
Right.
more often. And
Right.
and I'm definitely guilty of that. So I don't want to throw bombs, but
Absolutely. Yeah, me
we,
too.
we
Yeah.
have this defense mechanism where we kind of feel like we should have an opinion on stuff, and our whole education growing up is based on getting the answer correct. Our whole
Right.
and that develops into this idea of proficiency where I make friends because I'm good at things. I get good grades and my teachers like me because I knew the answer to write down, and that becomes a huge part of our personality. Like I know this, I'm right about this. I can say something in a random conversation about the guitar making business, and someone might not have any sort of experience with that, but they'll have the answer in 30 seconds.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
I know that this is a thought that came to mind, but it's not based on any sort of experience. So why do you feel like you have to contribute that? Why can't you just ask a question instead? But we all kind of do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's an unconscious thing that, like you said, combination of how we were brought up, the education process that we were brought up in. We're kind of conditioned to that sort of thought process. I feel like, you know what I mean. But that's why I like having conversations with people like yourself, because now it's like I can just throw my ignorance out there and wear it on my sleeve, and
Totally.
guess what? It's okay.
Absolutely.
No problem. You
Yeah.
know?
This guy
And
Donald Miller has this book called Scary Close, and if I remember correctly, the whole book is pretty much garbage. It's just like him talking about how he got to this final thought, which wasn't very interesting at all. But the thought is it really changed my perspective on things, and it's the idea that we create or develop our personality based on proficiency. Because growing up, we learn, hey, if I get better at X, Y, and Z, I get the attention that I'm looking for. I get the friendships I'm looking for. I get good at football. Now the football team respects me. Now they become my friends, and I want friends. oh, the girls are paying attention to me, and I want girls to pay attention to me, so I'm going to get better at this. Now there's this new thing. I'm going to get better at guitar playing because now they're all looking at me and they appreciate, and it becomes this conditioning of proficiency. What ends up happening though is it becomes this shell. And so now, we're talking about the downsides of social media, and the downside of social media is that we're all connected but not connected. We all feel very disconnected even though we're 3 seconds away from anybody. And the reason I see that happening is we're so conditioned to connect through proficiencies, when really how we connect is we connect through our deficiencies. You're not afraid of being dumb? Hey, guess what? I'm not afraid of being dumb either, because I'm dumb about almost everything. And now suddenly,
for sure,
our conversation's really different. It's like, oh yeah, I'm a total idiot. Me too. And now we're actually connected as human beings. It's not this dick wagging contest where I'm saying a bunch of really great sounding things. So now it's your turn to say a bunch of really great sounding things, and back and forth we go. It's actually a real connection.
Yeah. I mean, that's the whole point, man. It's that's why I love musicians. That's why I love talking to people like yourself. That's the whole point of all of this, man.
Yeah.
But we're kind of coming up on the end of the episode, so let's wrap this up with what we got planned for the rest of the year. We're about what we got, about 5 months left.
Yeah, scary.
Something like that. I know, right?
Yeah. So rest of the year is that Mule is coming out in September. That's going to be our big thing. That was a huge project, and I'm really excited to get that out and support Charlie Parr that way. And then we're just kind of doing what we do over here. The shop is at where I want it to be at. We're not making any big moves. We're making tools for musicians, and that's it. And then a NAMM show in January. So, yeah.
Nice. Oh, dude. Well, and it sounds like I listened to a podcast with you with Blake Weiland for the Tone Mob, and I listened to both those episodes.
Cool.
And it was a really cool, stepping stone for both those. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was really, and I always love to see the progress,
Wasn't that, yeah, it was so fun. Yeah, Blake texted me, he's like, man, it's been a bit. Let's talk about, how this has gone. And so that was a fun, full circle thing, too.
Yeah. Well, Blake's one of those guys that kind of inspired me to get going into this. So,
cool.
He's
awesome.
It's cool to have, a mutual friend within this whole crazy thing. But before we wrap this up, let's get your plugs out of the way, too. Where can everybody find you guys at?
The website is muleresophonic.com, and on Instagram, we're Mule Resonator Guitars. And those are the two places that we post the most content. And I'll say that, Resonator guitars might not be your thing at all. Totally fine. Most of our content is musicians. For 10 years, I've posted most of our content is, hey, Charlie Parr, this video is crazy. Hey, Joey Landreth, you got to check this out. This is amazing. Hey, Libby DeCamp, one of the best songwriters you've never heard of. She's gonna play at the Opry. It's gonna be a huge deal. She doesn't know that yet. It's gonna happen. That's the stuff. So if you're looking for new music, and go to the website. There's tons of videos. And same on social media. So it's not just trying to sell you shit. It's trying to show you music.
Absolutely, dude. Well, for Matt and for all of you, we shall check you next week on Man the Helm Podcast.